Welcome to AI for Good, the leading, action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Agency for Digital Technologies, in partnership with 40+ UN sister organizations and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify innovative applications, build skills and standards, and advance partnerships to solve global challenges. In today's AI for Good event, we are counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished facilitators and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Justin Brady, the relatively new head of the Interagency Support Branch of OCHA, which includes the Interagency Standing Committee Secretariat. And I want to thank you for joining us today for the session on humanitarian data at the Crossroads, preparing for the AI revolution. We're very happy to put this on in collaboration with the International Telecommunications Union in the AI for Good initiative. Artificial intelligence is reshaping many aspects of our world, including the humanitarian sphere. AI offers powerful opportunities to enhance crisis response, from predictive analytics to real-time decision-making. But at the heart of AI's effectiveness lies one fundamental question: are we as humanitarians ready to utilize it to its full potential? Humanitarian organizations have been exploring independently AI's potential, but much of what has been learned has been fragmented. And to fully realize AI's benefits, we need a much more coordinated approach, one that brings together technical expertise, responsible data governance, and collaboration across sectors. Today, we will explore the challenges and opportunities of adopting humanitarian data systems for artificial intelligence, from standards and infrastructure to ethical considerations and private sector partnerships. Our panel will examine what it means to be AI ready. This session is part of the AI and Humanitarian Action Discovery Series, a collaboration between the IASC, OCHA, and AI for Good. Through this initiative, we aim to bridge knowledge gaps, connect stakeholders, explore the promise and the risks of AI-driven solutions in humanitarian contexts, and foster collective learning. I'm pleased to welcome our panel of distinguished speakers. We are fortunate and honored to have with us today Dr. Alex James, Chief AI Officer at Redefining, Ms. Zainab Babi, AI Lead for Norwegian Refugee Council, Mr. Philip Jegu, Principal Account Manager, United Nations at Amazon Web Services, Ms. Karina Wangwe, Chief Data Officer at UNICEF, and Dr. Michael Chalve, Senior Artificial Intelligence Advisor of OCHA and founder of Humanitarian AI Advisory. Following the panel, there will be time for discussion, and we'd like you to share your comments at any time in the chat. Let us now turn to our first speaker. I'd like to introduce Dr. Alex James. Dr. James is Chief AI Officer at Redefining, a leading company in AI's efforts in engineering and applied research. His teams create AI models that detect events globally and in real time. A scientist and AI inventor with 15+ years of experience, Alex has built products used by millions, including real-time events detection and self-driving cars, at companies like Yahoo, IBM, and Siemens. Alex has over 100 patents and publications in top-tier conferences and journals in AI and holds an MS in computer science and a PhD in electrical engineering from Columbia University. Dr. James, in the wake of the recent earthquake in Myanmar and many other disasters, humanitarians have explored, though not always successfully, various data sources such as satellite imagery to assess infrastructure damage, cell phone data to locate people, and social media intelligence to guide aid efforts. Data miners' crisis alerts and situational awareness services are highly relevant in these contexts, especially given your ability to operate at scale. Could you elaborate on the types of data, technology, and AI models that data miner utilizes to provide these services? And additionally, in the context of crisis response, where the costs of error is high, how do you mitigate the risks? Over to you, Dr. James.
Perfect. Well, thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me. Very excited. I want to thank everyone who's here, including my fellow panelists. Very exciting webinar. Let me start by explaining a little bit about what the Data Miner platform does, just to set the ground for the discussion. So what the platform does is it ingests data from many different types of sources from all over the world. It's only public data, so I want to reemphasize that it's public data from all over the world. This includes images, video, audio, sensor data, and text in over 150 languages, and all kinds of platforms, social media platforms, web, again, sensor data, video feeds, et cetera, and it's only public data. So the challenge is you have all of this data. It's an ocean of data coming in, and what we aim to do is detect events that are important. And our focus is only events. It's not people, it's events only. And it's doing it in real time. And so one of the key questions is, okay, well, what is an event? And what kinds of events do you want to detect? We detect events that are relevant for our customers across a very wide range. That includes public sector, corporate risk, and news and journalism. And in essence, it's really any event that requires a response. And a big focus of this is emergency response. So any event where some sort of response is needed to help alleviate the situation, right? So you can think of traffic accidents, hurricanes, earthquakes, et cetera, et cetera. And when you think about some of these events, it's pretty clear that they're relevant across those three areas, right? A hurricane impacts the public sector because it impacts people living in a specific area and all the agencies that respond to that emergency. It impacts businesses that operate in the area, including their employees, their assets, their customers, their executives, et cetera, et cetera. And it has an impact on journalists because they want to cover the event so that they can help those impacted by the event. So in essence, what the platform does is detect these events and sub-events, and then it sends alerts about those events to customers across all of those three areas. So in essence, the same alert goes out to different customers depending on their interests. So a hurricane, for instance, will go to all of them, right? It'll go to users in the public sector and corporate risk and in news and journalism. So that makes it a very hard problem because as a platform, we're not really building custom stuff for any specific customer within that range that I described. Our focus is really detecting as many events as possible that are relevant, that are useful, that can save lives, that can actually have a positive impact. So that means the range of events is very, very wide, and that poses a major challenge in terms of scope. The second challenge is in terms of scope is the types of data, right? I mentioned images, video, audio, sensor data, et cetera, et cetera. When you think about that, it means that no single AI model and that humans alone would not be able to process this data for the third reason, which is the scale, right? We're doing this worldwide, which means we're ingesting data from all over the world. So if there's an earthquake in Myanmar, we immediately get data from a sensor, potentially. It might be the first indication, but there may be other indications from other sources. right? So when you add up all of that data per second, the volumes are huge. So there's no way to have humans sit there and look at this data and manually determine what's important, what's important to whom, what's not important, what's real, what's not real. So the challenge in our platform and the way that we leverage AI is by building models that are kind of in two different categories. And we all know there's been an explosion in AI in the last 2.5 years. And a lot of people think, oh, AI is generative AI and it's ChatGPT-like systems and it's chatbots. But it turns out there's a lot more to AI, and AI has been around for decades. And I've been working in AI for decades. And a lot of the AI that's used in production today in many, many companies and in industry and government is predictive AI. Predictive AI doesn't mean that you're predicting the future. It just means you're predicting labels, right? So in our platform, what that means is data is coming in. So let's say you have a piece of text that comes in from whether it's a social media platform or a website or a news article, whatever it comes from. Um, a model or somebody has to predict, is this an event or not? If it's an event, is it a real event? Is it important? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bunch of metadata that needs to determine whether that event is important or not, or even if it is an event. So that's kind of the first step. So we've built a bunch of models to do that, and they're predictive in the sense that they're just predicting labels. And again, the focus is only on the events. It's not on the people, it's not on anything else. It's just somebody says there's an event somewhere, and the system just tries to determine was it an event or not, and when did it happen? And if it's recent, then it's relevant. If it happened 10 years ago, it's not relevant. Or even a week ago, it's not relevant anymore. The second bucket of models are the models that then take all of that metadata for that event candidate and summarize everything about that event and create an alert. And this is what our customers will get that says, this was, there's a report of this event happening at this location, or this happened at location X, Y, or Z. And that's what allows first responders to respond. Last year, we launched something we call Regen AI, which basically takes an event and then the sub-events that are related to that event, and it creates a brief, a live brief that when you go to the platform, it's a paragraph that tells you everything you need to know about that chain of events. So in something like the Myanmar earthquake, you'll get in a single paragraph all of the details of the latest information of what you know. So for that part, and also for the generation of the alert, we use generative AI models. Turns out the technology behind the two types, predictive and generative, is kind of the same. They're large language model based models that take information and generate either a label or generate some sort of a summary. How do we deal with the risks of the information being false? Kind of as a policy, we think that in most cases, a false negative is less expensive than a false positive, meaning if there's an event that requires emergency response and we decide to wait until we have all the evidence and we're 100% sure that it's accurate, that may mean more people die. So we'd rather send it out as soon as we can. And then if we find out that something was wrong with the information, then we send an update as quickly as possible. So that's sort of the general policy. But in general, what the platform does is it takes as much evidence as possible from all of these data sources to determine whether an event is relevant or not. And that's what's actually used in determining how accurate it might be or not and whether it's sent out or not. So with this, I'll stop and hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. James, for that insight into how DataMiner leverages diverse data sources, remote sensing, social media intelligence to enhance situational awareness in crisis. I think the emphasis on balancing scale with accuracy, particularly through the AI models designed to mitigate errors in high stakes humanity contexts is quite important. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to our next speaker now, and I'm very pleased to turn to Ms. Zainab Babi. Ms. Babi is the AI lead at Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, spearheading NRC's AI initiatives to harness emergency technologies to better serve refugees and internally displaced populations across the globe. She's a humanitarian data specialist with over a decade of experience applying data science and machine learning to complex humanitarian challenges, including leadership roles in major international responses. Zeynep has held various data and AI roles in several humanitarian agencies, including serving as Chief Technology Officer at IMAP, a passionate advocate for open, collaborative, and responsible technological innovation in humanitarian action. She is driven by the transformative potential of AI to address persistent data gaps in the sector. Ms. Bebby, after hearing about the advancements in data and AI models, humanitarians still tend to define data as structured and quantitative, informative information available in tabular formats, such as tables and spreadsheets or as geographic references. Do you think the humanitarian sector should redefine what data mean before diving into conversations about science and technology? And do you see this as an opportunity to contribute to the ongoing humanitarian reset? So, Zeynep, over to you.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for having me. Pleased to be here and excited to be part of this amazing panel. Yeah, and thank you for this question. It's a really good time to be addressing such questions. I think the humanitarian reset offers some opportunities, as much as it's challenging for us, the humanitarian community. But I think it is time for us as a humanitarian sector to redefine what data means, and broaden a bit the aspect of what we consider as data. Some of the examples that Alex just mentioned, like social media and satellite imagery and signals that come in from different types of sensors, is sadly not really captured in our traditional data collecting work streams. The humanitarian sector obviously has seen a lot of innovations over the last 10 years. There's been a lot of talk about big data in the past few years, but sadly, often the technological progress doesn't necessarily translate into institutionalization of these new approaches. However, as we see now with talks about redefining the humanitarian space and the humanitarian reset, offers really some great opportunities. It's also important to note that it's comes with a lot of challenges. It's not really it's quite difficult for a lot of organizations to operate now with downscaling of funding. But at the same time, it offers some positive outcomes. For example, some conversations that humanitarian misfits like myself used to have after work hours are now becoming mainstream and are part of high-level humanitarian policy conversations, such as decolonization of aid, removing layers of hierarchy, talking about pooling resources, talking about representation, and listening to the voices of the affected communities. These conversations now are at the forefront and no longer edgy. So that is really some positive change. Affected communities, as we all know, don't necessarily communicate in spreadsheets, and the ways we used to perform needs assessments is no longer, in some ways, possible, and as much as it was also not always representative of the communities we are working with. We're working more and more in situations where we have limited access, so we have to become more innovative about how we collect information about the needs of the communities we want to serve. So AI obviously offers a lot of potential there, but in order to do that, we have to broaden our understanding of what data means, to incorporate a bit more how communities communicate, and they do communicate in voice, in image, in stories on Instagram, and different ways that we have been unable to capture in the past. And I think there is now the technology, and the likes of data miner offer also some really promising applications that we should explore how to integrate, and also how to link that event detection to what it translates to in terms of impact, or humanitarian impact, and humanitarian needs on the ground. And that's, I think, where humanitarian organizations come in and make the link between these innovations and how it translates to humanitarian response. So yeah, we've seen some promising efforts, I think, in the past years with DEEP, for example, quite recently with the Joint Analysis Workspace initiative, which looks into how can we collaboratively process data that comes from different unstructured data work streams. But it has been so far only focusing on text data. And I think if we are able to expand that to multimodal data, that would be, that would take us to the next step and enable us to respond better with the limited resources we have. Back to you,
Thank you,
Justin.
Zainab. Just a quick follow-up. Considering that the potential of redefining data in humanitarian sector, what challenge do you foresee in integrating that multi-model data? How can AI models help us overcome those challenges?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think as much as AI offers opportunities, of course, there is also it doesn't solve all our data problems in the sector. There is still the big challenge of connectivity and digital literacy in some aspects. Of course, it's getting reduced more and more with technology being available and adopted more widely and very quickly. But I think what we see also as challenges is that there are a lot of siloed opportunities, the silos initiatives that are happening. Now we're talking about Myanmar as an example. We've seen a lot of new products that have come out in the last couple of weeks. There are products that show the impact on the population, and a lot of those products were produced using AI, so they were very quick to respond and to produce insights that help field teams to operate. But at the same time, what we've seen is that there was really very little coordination between these different efforts. There is still a lot of siloed efforts. We see also that private sector is helping, but at the same time, in some ways, contributing to the fragmentation of efforts. A lot of different bits and pieces of pilots have been run by different organizations. What we really need to move towards is how can we build the foundations for using AI that is sector-wide focused and not organization focused. And so far, I think it's great to see all these little bits of innovation streams. But what would be really great is if we could bring it together. Looking at platforms like HDX, for example, building something similar that would work for AI models that have been adapted to the sector, and building a data foundation that can be shared beyond kind of these siloed data systems. We need to also think beyond products and think more data infrastructure. And that is something that we see very little of at the moment. The challenge is also funding. Computing is not cheap. And also funding of these initiatives is very limited right now, so which leads also to more competition. So I think that the lack of coordination is a big issue. But we see also that there is some initiatives that are going there, and I think they need to be pushed forward and supported further.
Thank you for that, and we're very hopeful that this initiative, in conjunction with the ITU AI for Good, is one of those steps toward that integration and coordination that you point to, not just coordination on the ground, but in that virtual space as well. So thank you very much, Zainab, for that. I'd like to now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Philippe Jagot. Mr. Jagot currently leads strategic United Nations relationships at Amazon Web Services, AWS, as principal account manager, where he focuses on empowering UN organizations with cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and data solutions to address global challenges. His expertise spans the intersection of technology and social impact, particularly in supporting deploying cloud-based solutions for humanitarian action. Previously holding leadership positions at Thales, Philippe brings a unique perspective on how AI and data-driven solutions can accelerate positive social change. His technical foundation, supported by a postgraduate degree in communication systems and networks from ENSEHAT, enables him to bridge the gap between complex technological solutions and humanitarian needs. Mr. Jago, given the fragmented nature of humanitarian the data ecosystem and your experience providing cloud hosting and supporting to many of them, how can modern cloud services and AI technology improve data flows, enhance interoperability, and accelerate the adoption of AI at scale within the humanitarian sector? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Justin, for your introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm very happy to be here with you. That's a great question you're asking, and something we think about almost every day for our customers. But before diving deep, I would like to share a few data points that we see across all our customers, whether they are enterprise customer in the commercial sector side or government in public sector like United Nations. What we see that more than 71% of application remains in silo, a bit everywhere at customer, preventing the extraction of data. It backs up very much what Zineb was saying about the fragmentation of data. We also see that 90% of the data generated by customer are completely unstructured and hence lacking, having issue to provide value out of it. We also see when it comes to AI, because good AI did good data, most of the AI value come from frontline application, meaning application interacting with the outside world. Also, one pitfall that we see with regards to data, and this is across all customers, is most of the data strategy are not providing the full benefits because they are mostly data forward and not business backward. And the latter is very key to favor the adoption of data and AI across ecosystem. The way I'm saying this is that the challenge we are discussing today is very similar to the challenge we see across the board with all our customers, and that the humanitarian sector can leverage multiple solutions already implemented and learn from others to bring value fast. At least that's what we are committed to at AWS. So when we think about humanitarian missions, there are many natural cloud benefits that align. First, the scalable nature of the cloud. This is the main benefit. You need resources, you speed them up. You don't need anything, you speed them down. And you only pay for what you use. This allows most of organizations to react fast to demand, but also with cost-effective solution because you just need to size your infrastructure strictly to what you need. There is no waste. The second is the distributed nature of the cloud, allows you to leverage resources very close to your need without carrying the burden of building. And so this, along with the automation, allows you to build infrastructure in seconds. The consequence of both things is that you can innovate fast. The way we think about innovation at Amazon is it's all driven by the fact of your failure rate, of increasing your rate of failure. And there is no innovation without failure. And with the cloud, the failure is way less closely. That's why we believe that the cloud is the right infrastructure to innovate. And for data, it's kind of the same. And finally, where we see the cloud naturally matching with the missions is for the security. The cloud is built for the most demanding workloads. To name a few, banks or healthcare, where similarly to humanitarian, data security is paramount. And so when you leverage the cloud, you can naturally inherit from the highest standard and preserve the control and sovereignty on your data. With regard to data interoperability and solutions, so let me address how modern cloud services are transforming how this interoperability acts in the humanitarian sector. We are seeing significant progress in breaking down data silos through standardized approach. For instance, our infrastructure supports most and common humanitarian data format and standard, making it easier for organizations to share and validate information. Also, through API management and integration services to break the silos, we can enable seamless connection between the different platforms. We don't believe that there should be one platform, but it's more a multiplicity of platforms that interconnect together, meaning that organizations can share critical information in minutes. And that's where comes the concept of data lake, what we call data lake, because you can create a single source of truth for organizations to store, access, analyze both structured, but also unstructured data in one secure location, regardless of the original format. Ultimately, we see this interoperability solution helping humanitarian organizations reduce duplicating effort while improving the data quality, but most importantly, responding effectively to those needs. As I was saying, good data is the foundation of AI and generative AI. And so let me show you a concrete example of how cloud technology is already making a difference. We are seeing remarkable results from organizations using our cloud services. For example, humanitarian organizations leverage our technology to predict natural disaster, coordinate emergency responses, or deliver aid more efficiently than ever before. Our vision for that is pretty much clear. We see a unified humanitarian data ecosystem where organizations can seamlessly collaborate, but also share insight while maintaining high standard in terms of security and privacy. What we also see important is the responsible AI part of the implementation, which is core to our approach, where we are committed to ensuring AI solutions are transparent, ethical, but also focus on augmenting human decision-making rather than replacing it. So looking forward, we believe the combination of both cloud technology and responsible AI will help humanitarian sector operate faster, create more value out of the data, for ultimately serving people better. I can stop here and handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Just a follow-up question. Where do you, as an organization, see the best understanding where the tech sector can provide the most value in support of humanitarian action?
I think we can think about the question with multiple angles. One, we have a tremendous compute capacity that we can give to humanitarian sector, give or lend or offer to humanitarian sector. And that's what we are doing with AI for Good. So we are partnering with AI for Good and ITU to provide computing credits and capacity for organizations to develop POCs. So that's the first thing that we can do. The second thing which we believe is paramount in order to scale and to mature the AI and data, it's the training. So we offer free training to most of the organization in order to learn how to build on our services and to get the value, let's say, faster. And the third part that we are doing with some United Nations organization is we can, let's say, put our resources and technical resources contributing and helping people to build on our product. So we see pretty much with those three axes: compute capacity, training, and pro bono technical support.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for your intervention. I took away particularly there your point that there doesn't need to be a singular platform. It's more how can those platforms interact and share so that we have the coordination that has been pointed to as a stumbling block till now. Great. We'd now like to turn to our penultimate speaker, Ms. Karina Wangje from UNICEF. Ms. Wangje is UNICEF's Chief Data Officer and Associate Director in DAPM, the Division of Data Analytics, Planning, and Monitoring. In this role, she provides intellectual, managerial, technical, and advocacy leadership in UNICEF for the safe use of data technologies such as AI, as well as all forms of data at global, regional, and country levels within the overall mission of UNICEF to promote the rights of every child. She has over 20 years of leadership experience in the data space from within international intergovernmental organizations, including the Commonwealth Secretariat. She has worked in academia and private and public sector organizations in the United Kingdom, Tanzania, and Uganda. Ms. Wangwe, we are delving into some technical aspects so far, but it's crucial that we stay true to principle. The Responsible Data for Children initiative emphasizes ethical data use, focusing on principles such as participatory engagement, professional accountability, and the prevention of harm throughout the data lifecycle. In high-risk crisis environments, determining what data should or shouldn't be collected for AI applications becomes even more critical. How do you think we can navigate these decisions to ensure data collection aligns with ethical standards and protects children's rights? And additionally, how might these considerations shift in emergency contexts where the urgency of response could conflict with ethical data guidelines? Over to you.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to speak today to this topic of data for good and AI for good. So the Responsible Data for Children proposes 7 principles. I'll talk to just 3 of them that relate to what we are discussing. So firstly, purpose, collecting data for a purpose. In a humanitarian situation and humanitarian emergency, there will be a purpose that is urgent, but there still needs to be a purpose that is explainable and is justifiable. And that kind of frames what data you're going to collect. So that principle, I think, is paramount, is important for what purpose is that data being collected. The second principle that I think is really important in a crisis is the prevention of harms across the data life cycle. So once the data is collected, it is used either to support a decision, it's used to support a service provision, it's ingested into an AI model. What happens at the end of the crisis? Is that data retained? Is it disposed of because the purpose is no longer what it was collected for? And that's where I think in the design of our AI models or our practices in implementing AI, this principle is really important. If data was collected and if it was collected because of the pressure of the situation and therefore there was perhaps less consideration to a rigorous risk analysis, then at the very least during the life cycle of that data, we have to come back to the ethical considerations and say, I collected this data for an emergency. Do I need to retain it or do I need to dispose of it as quickly as possible? So there are anecdotal incidences where images, especially for children, have been collected, retained after the emergency, and then come back to re-traumatize that child years after the fact. So these are considerations and really serious considerations, especially for children who don't have as much agency to make decisions as adults. So when we talk about ethics, we're talking about consent, we're talking about privacy, and for children, it's especially important because, as I said, they don't have as much agency as adults. They're not able to speak for themselves in many situations, and worse still during a humanitarian crisis. And then the principle also from responsible data for children of proportionality. When you're making decisions about what data to collect, how much of that data do you really need? Should that data, do you need personal details? Can it be anonymized? These are practices that need to be built into a humanitarian response. And if we are building them, especially for use in an AI tool, we also need to understand what function the tool is going to be used for, because that also has an impact on the decisions that you made. So if you're using an AI tool for translation, it's a low-risk application, that might have less consideration than if you're using an AI tool for identification or to support identification, or if you're using it for predictive analytics. The way that you assess your decision on what data to collect is also dependent on the function that that AI tool is going to serve. So all in all, the question around ethics and data collection is still applicable in a humanitarian crisis. I believe that a consideration of ethics does not delay your judgment when deciding what to choose, and especially if the ethical consideration has been built from the design of your intervention, it has been taken into consideration in the design of the AI tools we use, and that's why AI for Good is really important. And ethics is not seen as a barrier to doing the right thing in any situation. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Zainab. Zainab, part of Karina. A follow-on question: are there specific protocols or frameworks that you would say are best for these applications in order to ensure the actionability and the speed at which we need to respond while still protecting the data privacy and rights of those that we are trying to assist?
There are specific, very useful toolkits that have been developed as part of the responsible data governance for children, responsible data for children that can be found on the Responsible Data for Children website. So there are toolkits to do rapid opportunities and risks assessments. There are tools to do rapid assessments of what data to collect. And these would be applicable whether or not you're using an AI tool. So these tools are available. UNICEF has also developed principles on how AI is applicable and how it affects children, which kind of inform what data you choose to collect and how you keep in mind the agency of children when responding or when using data in a humanitarian crisis. So there are a number of frameworks and tools that are available that could provide some guidance on the use of AI and informing the decisions on how and what data to collect.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my camera there. Corinna, thank you very much. Again, I think bringing in this point on principle and the rights of those that we're assisting and ensuring that they're protected while we are trying to do the most for them and really bringing in that do no harm principle throughout this life cycle here. Okay, I'd like to now go to our final speaker, Dr. Michael Chalve. Dr. Chalve is a senior AI advisor to OCHA. He brings more than 2 decades of experience with AI, from applied science and research to tech sector AI product development, as well as many years of close collaboration with the humanitarian sector, most recently serving as chief AI architect at Microsoft Philanthropies, where he helped humanitarian organizations leverage AI to amplify their impact. Having seen the broad need for AI expertise in humanitarian action, he left the tech sector to found Humanitarian AI Advisory, dedicated to helping humanitarian organizations and stakeholders understand how to harness the potential of AI while now navigating its pitfalls. Since 2009, Michael has been assistant professor at University of Washington, where he teaches AI in the humanitarian sector and ethical innovation. He holds a PhD in artificial intelligence from University College London. Michael serves as board chair and technology advisor for Sprea Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to improving healthcare and education and empowering women and girls in underserved communities in Bangladesh. Dr. Chalve, you've been advising humanitarian organizations on AI for more than a decade now. Beyond data and technological infrastructure, what cultural or organization changes are needed in the humanitarian system to fully embrace AI-driven data systems? And secondly, how can we ensure these systems are sustainably adopted and trusted by frontline humanitarian workers? Over to you.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here today. You're absolutely right that being fully ready for AI does require you to consider the status of both your data and your tech infrastructure. We've already seen some key recommendations for how to do exactly that from my fellow panelists today. You also need to make sure that your team is ready and that they have what they need to be successful as you're onboarding with AI. I think that the biggest cultural shift needed for the humanitarian sector is probably to lean in on some of the discomfort around new technologies. I find that the best way to address the fear of the unknown is to better understand it. And so AI is clearly here to stay, and we're already seeing adoption of AI in many different places across the humanitarian sector. So organizations need to embrace the unknown for a little while as they learn about how AI works and explore where and how they can use it as part of their mission. And so I see 2 key components to get organizations as well as their staff to a place of trust around AI. The first is to demystify AI. So to help the staff understand what AI is and how it works. And so that requires implementing scaling and capacity building processes for your organization. But doing so in a way that's resilient to change and to the fast-moving landscape of AI as well as other technologies. So today the focus may be on generative AI, tomorrow it may be agentic AI or something else, but you'll need that organizational structure that allows you to engage on both the current technologies as well as those that will follow in the future. And so that's one key component. I think the other is to develop an AI policy, one that is tailored to your specific organization, as well as to the specific context in which you operate. And so it should specify for which use cases AI has been approved, as well as with which AI tools and services, and then include a clear process for how to get approval if you want to use AI for something else. It's good to start somewhere, frame it to what is exactly defined and known and approved, and then you can always expand from that as opposed to going in the other direction. And so this really helps avoid some of the confusion that I've seen across different organizations around what you can use where. And it also reduces the risk of unintended consequences when you know exactly what is being used across the organization. The other thing is to learn from each other across the sector. A lot of very similar discussions are happening right now in very similar organizations. So share case studies and lessons learned, best practices for how your organization has been using AI. I think that's something that's very helpful for organizations that are similar to yours and that are in a similar situation on their AI journey to yours. So I think that with the level of maturity we see in AI today, with what the technology can do, the biggest obstacle to be able to fully lean in on its potential is imagination. And so the key challenge is connecting the dots between what the technology can do and how that can be used in the unique context of your day-to-day tasks and priorities. So seeing the way that others across the sector have used AI makes it easier to identify where it can play a role for you as an organization and for you as an individual. Back to you, Justin.
Excellent. Thank you. Camera's off here. A follow-up question. Look, there's a lot of excitement to get into this space to utilize the potential of this, but how do you really get started safely and responsibly? How do you jump into that pool and find not jump into the deep end and find out you can't swim?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's an important question, really. I think it's healthy to be concerned, or at least skeptical around AI. The humanitarian sector often works with at-risk populations. And on top of that, when you're dealing with technology that is able to disrupt at a societal scale, it's okay to be concerned. But you also need to understand its potential for positive impact. And so that requires some familiarity with the technology, some understanding of how it works. And so what I have seen working well across various humanitarian organizations is to start exploring, to start small, get familiar with how AI works, understand its limitations, understand what is required for it to work the way you want it to work. And so that may mean building an initial proof of concept, for example. But start with that and then test it across your immediate team and get feedback, iterate on that, and then get more people in the organization included and get them familiar with the technology. Key reason is that builds trust with the technology across the organization before you even consider a larger scale implementation. And yes, of course, develop your AI policy, I think is really important. And so we're entering this discussion at what's really a unique moment in time where two highly impactful and far-reaching factors are currently intersecting. So on one side, the humanitarian sector is currently underwater in terms of its ability to effectively address the growing humanitarian needs. And on the other side, modern AI has matured to the point where it's capable of playing a central role in the path forward. So at a time where humanitarian actors are being asked to do more with less, AI offers an attractive means to address the growing humanitarian needs. But of course, that introduces the risk, if you're moving too fast, of introducing unintended consequences despite good intentions. So I think across the humanitarian sector, we need to make sure that all the relevant stakeholders have the appropriate level of understanding of the technology you're engaging with. Not everyone needs to understand how to train models, how to select data for training and things like that. But depending on what your role is or your engagement, have the appropriate level of understanding. And so, as you alluded to here, we recently launched the Safe AI initiative, where we're working on a framework for the safe and responsible use of AI, specifically for humanitarian actors. So we've designed this from the ground up to be a collaborative initiative, bringing in guidance and insights from a broad range of experts. And our goal is that the outcomes, more than anything, will be something that's actionable. So providing step-by-step guidance and meet you wherever you are in your AI journey. And so if anybody's interested in participating or learning more, please reach out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Salve. It's been referred to throughout this discussion as an AI journey. And I think your points of, for any journey, you need to prepare yourself and not just simply head out the door, but have what supplies and preparedness you need in order to make the most of that journey. So very, very interesting. That brings the end of our speakers. I'd now like to open up the floor. We do have some questions. If you have questions, please enter them in the chat or in the Q&A section. First question, I'd like to go to Zainab. It's a practical question. Can you give one or two examples of what NRC does where AI is enhancing that activity? What is the actual assistance to the populations that you can point to and say, we used AI and that resulted in X, Y, or Z?
Yes, that's a good question, practical question. We at NRC have been approaching AI with a very cautiously, and we didn't really implement solutions at a wide scale yet. We had few pilots, and if what they are meant to achieve once they are actually rolled out is to reduce, for example, the burden on people when we are doing needs assessment, or when we are implementing, for example, we implement cash assistance at scale in rapid response. And a lot of the challenges that come with that type of implementation is that we roll out in a big scale a campaign, and a lot of requests then are coming in, and that's often overwhelms our systems. So what we are exploring is how can we use AI to optimize these processes, and also to offer some guidance to the applicants as their application is being processed. It's not something that has been rolled out yet, but it's something that we are exploring to improve a bit our assistance to people in need. Another aspect is that what we're looking at is building an ecosystem of actually data ecosystem that enables us to pull in data from different sources and provide quick overview of the humanitarian needs on the ground. So we have all this events detection, for example, from Data Miner, and we're looking into the different data that comes through the different work streams. Like there is also Gannett from Data Friendly Space that is collecting data from news reports and Relief Web. And what we're trying to build is a system that allows our field officers on the ground to access the information in their local language and in a more concise and actionable format. Over.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. You can please keep your cameras on as we go through the questions. Over to Dr. James. Do you curate your data sources, or is it more of a blind search? And how do you recommend humanitarians shift their data models to make sure it's as ready for AI, but also future-proof it for opportunities that may come? Over to you, Dr.
Yeah,
James.
so I mentioned that all the data that we ingest is public, but there's a lot of data out there, so it's not obvious what data is useful and which one is not. We currently ingest over 1 million data sources, where just to give you a sense of the scale, X, or previously known as Twitter, is counted as one of those more than 1 million data sources. So we're continuously updating and ingesting new data sources that we find relevant. And part of the process is understanding whether those data sources contain events that are important to our customers and that would be useful in sending the alerts. So there's curation in that sense, that we are continuously improving and looking at more diverse and wider data sources. The other aspect is, of course, that if you look at social media platforms or data sources in general, they're not the same in every country, right? Some countries and some regions use some data there are different data sources that are relevant depending on where you are in the world. So that varies depending on region, et cetera, et cetera. So there's creation in that sense, but then the actual models just take in that data and try to determine the events. And the second question was how do humanitarians, how can they adapt to data sources? Sorry.
Yeah, how do you get into it, but then also how do you recommend humanitarians shift their data models to make sure it's ready for AI, but also future-proof it for opportunities that may come?
Yeah, so I think one of the misconceptions with AI is that often people think that you need a lot of data to do anything, and that's not always true. Sometimes even with small amounts of data, there's a lot of work that you can actually get done, especially with the new models. So I would say, and echoing a little bit what Michael said, start small and take it one step at a time. But one way of doing this is, of course, understanding the tools, using what's out there as an experiment first, as a proof of concept, and then have a strategy. And that's where you actually look at data sources. One of the challenges that we have at our scale is that even though all the data we use is public, some of this data we actually have to pay for. So that makes it very expensive and very complicated because we have to sign deals with data providers, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not doing it at such a wide scale, there are lots and lots of public data sources out there and public data that you can leverage. So instead of trying to boil the ocean, when you're not building a large scale platform like ours and you're building something that is more specific, I would say try to focus on the data that you might really need. And so the work there is really understanding the problem, setting the right goals, the right metrics, and just getting started with the proof of concept. And again, even with some of the open source models, there's a lot you can do. You can go pretty far, but the trick is to get started and start one step at a time as opposed to the entire thing. In terms of future-proofing the work that you're doing, I think, as others have mentioned, keeping in mind ethics, the data retention, what you use it for, et cetera, is critical in your thinking. But the other one is understanding that the innovation ecosystem in AI is moving very, very quickly, and there are new models almost every day, if definitely every week. And so you need to set up processes that allow you to quickly experiment and swap in and out these models and try out new applications as they come out. So you really want to become a very agile um, uh, company or non-for-profit or organization in trying new things out. That's how you future-proof it, because things will continue to change very, very quickly.
Great, thank you for that. The next question, I'm going to pose it to Philippe and to Michael. We'll start with Philippe, but the reality is that for most cases, we still have aid workers in emergencies busy cleaning basic data just to produce a basic infographic. And how is this going to change that process? Are you, and the question goes on, are you talking about speeding up this type of workflow by storing everything in a data lake and then using an LLM to generate insights and recommendations? So, Philippe, any thoughts on that question?
I think there are multiple ways to think about it. And I'm not sure to know, especially this use case. What we see very useful, because with data, we often this gap between the business or the people that are on the ground and the statistician, the data maker. One concept that we have seen very much working is the data stewardship, where people from the business or from the field can help the statistician to better understand the data. So that's one thing to bridge. I think it's answering one part of the question. The other part of the question is, yes, I mean, when we apply generative AI to organization, one value is to speed up processes and to simplify processes by extracting the value out of the data and connecting it to an LLM. That's one way to see it. We also see a very good value when you provide, let's say, Gen AI outside of the organization. But yes, to your question, simplifying processes is one key value of generative AI.
Okay, thank you. Michael, do you have?
Yeah, just adding to that, I think historically, we've seen organizations spending a lot of time on cleaning data. I think it has been sort of almost full-time task for some individuals. And LLMs have really changed the game from that point of view. Philippe, I think, mentioned a data point that 90% of the data they're seeing is unstructured. And so that means that before having the access to generative AI models, that would either take a lot of time to spend on cleaning that data, or you would simply just not use it. So using LLMs to access and get insights and make good use of unstructured data has become significantly easier. Flip side of that is also because LLMs are foundation models, they can do a lot of things that you in the past would have needed different types of models to do. It's a lot easier to just use the out-of-the-box models as they are, and then you can just point it to some of your data and ask questions on that. So I think the tasks of cleaning data, the time spent and the energy and resources spent on cleaning data has been dropping and will continue to drop.
I'm going to ask, we have a range of people with us today, and many who are new to this space. Can you just discuss a little bit, what is an LLM?
I can take a stab at it. Anybody wants to jump in as well. But so a large language model, or an LLM, is the new architecture that we've seen. Sort of the most popular one came out in November, a little over 2 years ago, with ChatGPT, a GPT type model that is generative, that is it's a transformer type model. That's the type of name of the architecture. And it's pre-trained, which means that it's been trained on a significant amount of data, very, very large models, which also means that they are capable of doing many, many different things. In the past, we've had sort of more narrow space, like we could do machine translation for one model, speech transcription for one model, but foundation models are able to do many, many different things, which has significantly lowered the barrier of entry for people to start to interacting with AI and discovering how it can play a role in their personal lives and their professional lives. I'll hand it up to someone else who may want to talk about LLMs.
No, I don't want to get too technical here. It's just using, living in a world of is familiar with what they're about. I'd like to go to Corinna. And a question, could you describe a little bit of the interagency structures, processes on sharing the AI experience within the United Nations?
I will talk about the data sharing, which is really foundational when it comes to interagency collaboration. So there are a number of initiatives. There's a Power of Data High Impact Initiative that is looking at coordinating data sharing at country level. There is a trilateral or multilateral agreements amongst agencies for humanitarian data, specifically for data in emergencies. And these have been very effective in supporting programs such as cash programs that are jointly offered by several agencies, including UNICEF, UNHCR, and WFP. So the data sharing agreements offer a really good opportunity to cut down the urgent need for data when it comes to the application of AI tools, and especially in humanitarian crises. And so that sets a foundational level, in my opinion, for then the discussions around AI. And so once you start to apply your AI tools, interagency application of tools, you're still applying those tools on data that is understood, that is explainable, that is good enough quality, and agreed across the agencies that this data is fit for purpose. So that is the practice within with regards to sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question that I have here, which generally, and I think goes back to the question that I posed originally to Zena. What are some really tangible examples where AI has been applied and been effective? What were the challenges in doing so? And that's kind of to any of you who can point to, we did X in country Y or territory Y, and this is the result.
I can start if that's okay, and if
Sure.
anyone wants to add more examples. I think AI has been at the focus of some efforts in the humanitarian sector since quite a few years. So before generative AI, predictive analytics have been used. I hope my connection is okay because it's cutting here. Yeah, thank you. To support anticipatory action, for example, trigger models that are supporting deployment of humanitarian aid before a disaster hits, are relying obviously on a lot of AI models that can use data, different types of data to generate like a prediction. And I think that's showed, there is a lot of promise there. Another example in the recent years with generative AI, I mentioned, so before generative AI, with natural language processing, the DEEP initiative that was supporting collective analysis of secondary data for humanitarian needs overview. And quite recently, Gannett, by data-friendly space that uses then the generative AI to process data from different data streams and provide an analysis of the situation on the ground. So currently for Myanmar and Lebanon and also DRC, if I'm not mistaken. So I think these are some successes that we've seen that are also kind of ecosystem facing and not organizational facing, that offer some promising applications. Over to anyone who wants to.
Thank you, Zena. Anyone else want to jump in with a concrete example? Michael?
Yeah, I can compliment on the use case. For a project that we had with Relief Web in South Sudan, where, for example, we did a WhatsApp integration, and in order to digitize on-writing medic activities, so being able to extract value out of some conversation while doing it securely, so removing the waste of everything that you can write and rewrite or in order to digitize faster. And that helps save numerous amount of time on the field in order for people to, let's say, spend their time on what is important for them.
Thank you for that.
I can add a couple more. Sure. And just sort of one high-level split between using out-of-the-box models just as they are on one side versus creating custom-trained models for a unique scenario. So the generative AI models, the LLMs, the large language models, allows you to do, as I mentioned, many different things. And so one of the things I have seen being very useful is, for example, just simple things as summarizing documents. If you have a PDF file that's hundreds of pages long, and you need to look at many of those, just summarizing all of that, it becomes very accessible and very easy. But also use it for things like grant proposal writing, or use machine translation or speech transcription, all works out of the box. On the custom model side, been looking with some NGOs at the moment to use to train a custom model based on drone footage, images for landmine detection to automatically identify where there may be landmines so that you can prioritize where to send out field operators to clear certain regions or areas. Another is using satellite imagery to train a model from before and after a disaster, and do automatic damage assessment of buildings and structures, so that if you're a response organization, you have people on the ground responding to that disaster, you have an instant, immediate view over where there are buildings that have been severely damaged, and which means that where there's likely to be the most need. So many different types of use cases, going from back office tasks that can become more effective as opposed to on the ground operations.
Yeah, I can add
please, James. Dr. James, go ahead.
Yeah. So as Michael said, there's sort of building custom models and there's using tools. On our side, we have a program where we work with non-for-profits to help them develop custom models. So it's outside of our traditional platform. And so we had a project with UN Human Rights where we partnered with them to identify and classify attacks on human rights defenders at scale. So we helped them build a model to do this. So this, increased detection of attacks over 100 times. So that's one example of a custom model. Another project that we did with Insecurity Insight, where we helped them build models to identify violence against civilians and damage to civilian infrastructure. And they saw a 20-fold increase in the number of events detected. And finally, with Ushahidi, we also did a project where we helped them build a model to classify and to determine geolocation of crowdsourced information. And the goal of that program we have is to help non-for-profits that are a little bit more advanced, that have data that is unstructured, that is hard to process, help them build models that scale. So we kind of volunteer scientists to build those models so then they can be used in production specifically for a task. But as Michael said, there are many, there's a very wide range of opportunities. And that's why I think, as Michael said, having people use the tools and understand what's out there is really critical, because very often you don't need the custom stuff. For use cases like the ones that I just described, you do, because otherwise it's very hard to get them to work. But for many other applications, there are tons of open source and free tools that you can use and leverage, and they can be very, very effective.
Thank you for that, Dr. James. Anyone else want to add?
And just to add,
Please,
UNICEF has piloted a project in Romania. It's a custom-built platform to support social care services to vulnerable children, and looking at how to anticipate where children will need a minimum package of services and how this can be improved, and to predict the needs over a course of years. So that's one case where a custom-built application is being used to serve the needs of children.
Thank you, Corinna, for that additional example. And as the former director of the UN Mine Action Service, UNMAS, that example Michael gave of using drones to identify landmine location is a particular interest of me. But again, the potential for this is quite broad. Maybe it's as much as our imagination of how to use it in a way that can help us achieve these things. That's all the time we have for the questions. I would now like to give each of our speakers an opportunity to kind of summarize and maybe the takeaways they have had. I think it's an opportunity for them also to hear each other and what this session can add to our discussion. We will have subsequent sessions, obviously, with the AI for Good initiative. But first, let me turn to Alex, if you want to kick us off with maybe some final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an excellent panel. Lots of information and ideas. I think I'm going to stick to my talking points, and that is that in general, AI brings a wealth of opportunity. I think it's an excellent technology because it um, maximizes efficiency, which in turn lower costs, and that means it increases access to resources across the board, including information. Of course, it can also be used in negative ways, but I think there's too much noise out there and too much fear around AI, and I think while the risks are real in some very specific applications, I think the opportunities are huge. And what I would encourage everyone to do at a personal level as a consumer, and much more if you work in the humanitarian space, is to really try to understand the basics of what the models can do, what they can't do, and what the tools that are out there can do. And that there's really a very wide range of opportunities from using applications to do stuff, some of which are free, to all the way to the other extreme, where we're actually building custom models and investing heavily, and where you need a lot of technical expertise. But the fact that there's this wide range means there's opportunities for everyone and for every organization. And while you want to keep the risks in mind and you want to make sure that you're doing things ethically and making sure the data that you use is clean, et cetera, you can always start one step at a time. So I think that's my main message. Don't be afraid, just go ahead and try out some of these tools, learn as much as you can. The more you learn, the better you're equipped to respond to the risks and to do it in a way that is going to actually have an impact. And finally, make sure that if you're actually implementing a program within your organization, that you have clear goals, clear metrics, and that you understand the 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 cost of errors if the system makes errors, what can go wrong, right? So you can put the proper guardrails around it.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. James. Zeynep, would you like to come in on your final thoughts for this session?
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I would like to come back just on the point on the multimodality that is offered with these new AI solutions and to really bring again the focus on the fact that by integrating the community's voices, then we bring them really at the center. They become co-creators and co-designers of interventions, and the fact that AI can enable that. Of course, there are some data responsibility challenges that come along the way, and we should not ignore those. But I think it's really worth exploring ways how we could collect information without overwhelming communities and also without overwhelming our field operations. And then I would really also like to, again, send another call for collaboration and for building together. We don't have to agree on every aspect of how we do it, but I think now the technology allows also for federated governance and different ways of working together without having to align on every single aspect of data definitions. Over.
Great. Thank you, Xander, for your participation today. Philippe, could I ask you to summarize a bit your thoughts?
Yes, sure. I think my main takeaway here is think big, start small, iterate very fast. It goes back to what we said, most of us said. There will be a disproportionate value to the organizations that have started fast on AI because it's going to last long. So you need to build your muscles as an organization, as a human, as a contributor. So that's my main takeaway. Just build.
Very good. Corinna, please.
So mine, again, from my talking points, is to think of ethics as a catalyst or as an accelerator for AI for good, build it into the design. I think that at the end of the day, if people trust the technology, trust that the data that has been used is speaking for them and to them, then the opportunities that AI brings to us will be fully exploited. And we truly are using the technology to better lives. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Corinna, for that. And then the final word from the panel, Michael, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I think I'll go back to, I think it's important that all relevant stakeholders across the organization and people you work with have the right level of understanding of the technology you're using, both its potential as well as its inherent risks. AI makes mistakes. It will always make mistakes. And so it's important to understand the limitations so that you can design appropriately, to Karina's point, and proactively integrate mitigation strategies for when it does go wrong. And so amidst all this excitement around AI, I think it's also important to keep in mind that AI is not always the right tool to use. And it helps to be able to verbalize exactly why you think that AI is the appropriate piece of technology for a specific use case. Also want to do a shout out to Karina's team, the work they're doing. I recently was part of the project in the Philippines where we needed to do some data collection, working with indigenous communities. It was part of an AI equity project that focused on language and culture preservation. And so being familiar with the responsible data for children principles, we really took a close look at the tools and material that exist on that website and adapted it and applied it to the specific data collection we were doing there. So in case you haven't seen it before, go check it out.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Okay, I'd like to start to bring this to a close, and I want to thank our panelists for their time. I think we had a nice diversity of experience and views to bring to this conversation today. And I also want to thank all of you who are participating, those who sent in your questions and took the time to join us today. A key takeaway from this conversation has been AI's potential in the humanitarian sector is that it's directly tied to the quality, accessibility, and the ethical use of that data. We've explored how humanitarian organizations can adapt data systems, ensuring they are not only technically robust, but also aligned with humanitarian principles of neutrality, protection, and accountability. As we've listened, preparing humanitarian data for AI is not just a technical challenge. It's a strategic and ethical one. Ensuring interoperability, safeguarding data integrity, and addressing the implications of private sector collaboration are critical steps in this journey. We also recognize that AI is not a silver bullet. Beyond the technical and operational considerations, there is need for cultural and organizational shifts to ensure AI-driven data systems are trusted, sustainable, and serve those most in need. This discussion is just one in an ongoing journey. Through the AI and Humanitarian Action series, we will continue to examine these critical issues, engage in diverse perspectives, and shape a collective approach to AI integration in humanitarian work. And as I said, this is one step. This doesn't end here. It's part of a broader effort to align AI innovations with humanitarian principles and to have it assist the sector in what is a very difficult time for us in the midst of what the Emergency Relief Coordinator has deemed a reset of the system. And we encourage you to continue to engage through this series on AI and Humanitarian Action series. The next session we will have is actually next week, April 9th, and that is on navigating truth in crisis, the dual role of AI in harmful information and humanitarian action. Excuse me. And then on the 15th of May, we will have another session, Powering the Future, Funding and Sustainable AI for Humanitarian Impact. I do want to note that today's session was recorded, and afterwards, after we finish, it will be posted on the IASC website, as well as the ITU website and social media. I encourage you, if you came in late, to capture all of it, as well as to share it with friends and colleagues who might find interest in the use of AI in the humanitarian sector. I want to thank everybody who has been involved in putting this all together. Julian and the team at ITU, as well as my own team here and our colleagues in the information management branch of OCHA. Again, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on the 9th. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learnt something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. We invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for good.